Most people think the Webway is just a portal that gets you from one place to another, or the transportation method of the Eldari race. And technically, those people wouldn't be wrong, but the Webway is much more than that. So, what exactly is the Webway? In simplest terms, it's a massive collection of pocket dimensions with labyrinth like passageways. The size of these passageways vary greatly. Some are small tunnels no bigger than a man, others immense, capable of holding entire space fleets ready for war. And those who have mastered the use of webway travel would describe it to you as if it were a bunch of arteries, truly resembling the image of a maze. How the webway would appear on a map, though, is entirely different. They resemble nodes that show no pattern and appear on craft worlds, clone worlds, and large port cities. Time flow can also be very strange within parts of the webway, stretching forward and even some corridors stretching backwards. The Eldar are fearful of tampering or experimenting with the webway's effect on time, so even they are unaware of the full temporal capabilities the webway possesses. And just where the location of this collection of pocket dimensions are is between the warp and the materium. So, how was the webway created? It is an old one creation, used to travel the stars without the usual risk of warp travel. And they would later gain mastery over the webway and began to use webway portals. And later the webway was used as a means to outmaneuver the Necrontyr, the Proto-Necrons, during the War in Heaven. And later the Necrons would have their own methods to enter the webway, and these were called Dolmen Gates. This was shown to them by the Catan known as the Burning One. And when this was discovered by the Necrons, it became the turning point during the War in Heaven. These artificial portals, the Dolmen Gates, are portals into the webway, but they are unstable, they're artificial, and they're unreliable. What's interesting is the webway can detect if a breach from the use of these artificial portals has occurred and seals these passageways until the invader has been dealt with. And the webway is using destructive force during the event of a network breach. So when hearing this, it sounds like an immune system or a hive's defense measures. And after the War in Heaven, the mastery of the webway would be passed down to who we all know, the Eldari. And when most of you hear the word webway, you probably think of Eldari. And so during the Eldari Empire, there were webway portals on all of their worlds, and they were all linked. The Eldar would travel quickly and safely to and from their worlds, and this is also the time where a massive port city was established in the webway during this time. This was called Kamora, later known as the Dark City of the Drukhari. And this was the biggest city in the webway and still is the biggest city. The majority of the Eldar who deviated to excess would relocate into the webway, into this city, and these leaders would command entire subrealms. Another major location that I want to talk about within the webway is the Black Library of Chaos, the most secretive, knowledgeable library in 40k, besides the ones in the Impossible Fortress in Tzeentch's realm. But this library lies, as you notice, in the webway. The Black Library is a craft world of the Harlequins. It is an archive of forbidden lore and is known to few, and those who can enter are even fewer. It is guarded by the Harlequins. This is pretty much a library that holds the records, tomes, scrolls, books, all related to chaos. If you want to know how chaos influences the galaxy, its forms, its creatures, it's in the Black Library. It holds records of a multitude of chaos cults. One of the most notable chaotic artifacts is the Book of Magnus. Many have tried to gain access because it is believed to hold the knowledge of godhood. But the Black Library is difficult to navigate. The webway is already a labyrinth-like dimension, and the Black Library is constructed in the shape of, a labyrinth too. So the Black Library is a labyrinth within a labyrinth. When and how the Black Library was constructed is a complete mystery, and it is left to speculation. Some think it is created by the Old Ones, some by the Eldari, but most seem to think that it was created by the Laughing God. And I believe also that it was made by him. I stand behind this theory because I could see him fleeing from the birth of Slaanesh and him trying to understand chaos in any way he can so he could eventually find a way to beat it. After the fall of the Eldar Empire, after the chaotic birth of Slaanesh, a majority of the Eldar Empire was destroyed or consumed. So what happened to the Webway? Well, a great portion of the Webway was destroyed or heavily damaged. Many passageways have been breached by the realms of chaos, leaving them treacherous and spell doom for all those found there. Many of the Eldar gods were eaten, captured, or shattered except for one, which I mentioned before already, the Laughing God, who fled into the Webway and still resides there, guarding and guiding the Harlequins. And besides the Harlequins, there are some other Eldar who survived within the depths of the Webway after the fall, and those are the Dark Eldar. They are the Eldar who relocated into the Webway during the height of the Eldar Empire, and one of the most important locations within the Webway, Dark Eldar societal capital, Camorra, the Dark City. And as I mentioned before, it was a massive port hub during the height of the Eldar Empire, but now it has been twisted and corrupted. Its scale is impossible to measure and has many outer realms and cities that are all linked by portals. And before it became the dark reflection it is today, it was used as a port city capable of transporting fleets to any of the highest priority Eldar worlds. It gave Eldar access to reach the furthest places within the Materium and became the most important place within the Webway. And I mentioned before that Camorra is where many of the leaders who fell to excess journeyed to, and they did this to hide many of their darker deeds and fetishes from the ruling Eldar Council, because it was outside of their jurisdiction. They couldn't do anything about it. And so Camorra grew and grew, absorbing more and more locations within the Webway. And when the fall of the Eldar Empire was at hand, the majority of the Eldar were punished for their decadence and excess, but the Eldar within the Webway, and more specifically in Camorra, did not change and fell even further into depravity. And this is how the city became the Dark City. So, Eldar, unwilling to change their ways and continuing to pursue their dark desires. And the Dark City is truly massive, as it holds other weird sub-realms such as Elendrak. Just like the Dark City, Elendrak was different during the Eldar Empire. It was a satellite realm filled with ancient and mythical treasure, and a great disaster caused this realm within the Webway to fall into shadow, and its physical laws were warped and distorted. The realm is now merged with several dimensions, most notably the Midnight Realm. The Eldari there were not spared either, as those who dwelled there became twisted and turned into what you know now as mandrakes. The realm is filled with new, dark, and malevolent denizens such as, just mentioned, mandrakes, shade ravens, and gloom winds. Mandrakes, though, seem to be the most hospitable of the residents, as they make pacts with other Drukhari. But even Drukhari are fearful of this realm and are on high alert if areas of Camorra could become drowned in its ever-expanding sub-realm. Now, there are a whole lot of mysterious realms that lie within the Webway that I could sit here and theorize about all day, but that's a rabbit hole for a different video. So, I spoke about how the old ones and the Eldari and the Necrons use the Webway, but they aren't the only ones who use it. There is actually one more, and you guys are probably already screaming about it. The Imperium has tried to make use of the Webway, and it was during the Great Crusade. You may have heard of the Emperor's Webway project. That went horribly wrong and is now a demon gate that has to be constantly held back. And just like the Necrons, the Emperor wanted to find a way to travel without the use of the warp, and he created the Golden Throne to create a Webway gate and link it to the vast Webway network. This Webway project was halted due to Magnus trying to warn the Emperor of Horus's treachery, and in trying to warn him, Magnus breached the Psychic Wars, and then it opened warp rifts in the human-controlled Webway sections, and this folly led to the Emperor having to stay absent throughout the Horus Heresy to constantly seal that Webway with his immense psychic abilities. And in the current setting, the Webway is kind of like an ancient castle that's used still, and there are many sections that are run down and abandoned. There are many abandoned passageways that are now infested by a variety of dangerous Xenos and demons. These doorways have been sealed to stop the spread to the rest of the Webway networks and entering the craft worlds themselves. Seers now hold the vital knowledge of craft world location within the Webway, and Necrons still make use of Dolmen gates, but these gates only give them an access to a small amount of the Webway because the Eldar have gone through great lengths to seal much of this contamination. Humanity has seemed to have given up on the pursuits to use the Webway as an alternative to warp travel, and now they just rely on the Emperor's Light, also known as the Astronomicon. Eldar knowledge of the Webway has also stagnated and even dwindled, as the only complete map of the Webway is located within the Black Library of Chaos. And there are now many invaders who try to pursue entry into the Black Library. The most famous one is Ahriman. He tries to find the entrance into the Black Library to understand Tzeentch, and speculated to even attempt godhood. The Webway is just really fascinating because, like I said in the intro, it's not just a passageway, but it's a whole pocket dimension. Laws are completely different in some areas, and it's something that is used a lot within the 40k lore, and a majority of factions have come across the Webway. The Webway is also something that can counter the risk of warp travel. It seems like it can completely just throw a middle finger to the Chaos Gods into the dangers of the warp. And I just wonder why more factions don't war over it for its dominion, for its domination, for the use of control. And there are a few important locations that I left out to avoid the video from getting out of hand. But let me know what you guys think about the Webway, and if you think the Webway is really that important to the setting, or some locations within the Webway you find interesting. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.